Listen closely, because what I'm about to tell you is the kind of truth families bury so deep that entire bloodlines learn to forget it. But you're not here to forget. You're here because some part of you has already sensed the fracture beneath the surface. So let's begin with the moment every illusion shattered, not when the confrontation happened, but 8 seconds before it, when a pattern centuries old finally snapped. It starts with an inheritance you were never meant to question. Not land, not wealth. When my family handed my brother $1 million home and then arrived at my door to claim mine, what looked like greed was actually something older, something stitched into the architecture of our lineage long before any of us were born. Every family has it, the unspoken command that some people deserve everything, and others exist to carry the weight. Some get houses, others become houses, foundations, floors, the quiet stability that keeps everyone else standing. I grew up as that foundation. Maybe you did too, the steady one, the reliable one, the one who never needed anything because needing would have disrupted the balance of power. That balance, by the way, isn't natural. It is engineered, trained, passed down like a sacred script. So when they showed up at my door, suitcases, soft voices, half-truths leaking from their smiles, they weren't acting out of desperation. They were following the script, the same one their parents used. And their parents before them, a script older than my brother's new mansion, older than any house standing on American soil today. Obey, absorb, sacrifice. Smile, bend. The script told them I would say yes, that I would open the door, that I would not question the story. They expected me to become the floor they walked on while they settled comfortably into the life they built on my silence. But something went wrong, or maybe something finally went right, because when I said the one word they didn't expect. No, I felt something ancient tremble, like a chain rattling against stone, like a creature waking in the basement of a house built generations ago. They weren't shocked because of the word. They were shocked because in that moment the script broke, their lineage lost a servant, their system lost a piece, and the machine that fed our family's power imbalance for decades cracked in half. And that's where every dark history begins, not with violence, but with disobedience. You need to understand something before we go deeper. When you break a generational script, the people who benefit from it don't react like family. They react like a system under threat. My parents weren't two individuals standing in my doorway anymore. They were the living extension of an institution older than our bloodline. A structure built on hierarchy, on emotional taxation, on the silent expectation that somebody must hold the burden so everyone else can keep pretending they're free. And the moment I said no, that structure panicked. It didn't panic loudly. Systems like this never roar first. They tighten, they constrict, they recalculate. Their first response is always subtle confusion, disbelief, a brief scramble to restore order. That's why my mother's face collapsed into trembling shock. Not because she was hurt, but because the machine inside her had just encountered a variable it had never been programmed for. My father didn't raise his voice. He didn't ask why. He simply narrowed his eyes like a man watching a tool malfunction. That's how deeply these roles run. When the obedient child stops obeying, the entire architecture of the family bends under the pressure. You can almost hear the gears grinding. But the darkest part. They think they're just having a disagreement. They mistake programming for personality. Look back at your own life. How many times have people expected you to carry the invisible weight because you're stronger, you can handle it, you don't complain, you'll understand? Those aren't compliments. They're assignments, chains handed down with a smile. My parents had already chosen their golden child, chosen who gets the $1 million cushion, the built-in safety net, the guaranteed future. Roles carved like ancient stone tablets. One child rises, the other holds the staircase steady. And when I refused to be the staircase, the entire system shook. Because in every dynasty, yes, dynasty, every family is one, whether wealthy or broke. The stability depends on someone giving more than they get, and they always assume that person will never wake up. But I did. And that awakening wasn't gentle. It came like a blade quietly sliding between old habits. It came like a whisper insisting the truth had been there all along, if I had only been willing to look at it. Most people spend their whole lives avoiding that moment, avoiding the mirror that shows who they have been and who they were meant to serve. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that's when the real descent begins. There is a moment in every man's life, Moment so quiet most people miss it, where he realizes the people he trusted were never protecting him. They were shaping him, carving him, training him to fit a role he never agreed to play. For me, that moment came this second. I learned the truth. My parents hadn't lost their house. They sold it voluntarily and funneled nearly $1 million into a home for my brother, not for survival, not out of need, but out of loyalty to the hierarchy. That when the veil finally lifted, because when a family chooses one child as its son, everyone else becomes orbit, gravity, fuel. It is not favoritism. It architecture, old world architecture, the kind kingdoms used long before the first brick of America was ever laid. One heir, one backup, one expendable. You can feel the weight of those roles even now. Can you somewhere inside you a memory stirs? The time you were blamed for peace, the time you were expected to sacrifice, the time your job was to understand, be resumed, is strong, be quiet, and you did it. Not because you were weak, because you were conditioned. Conditioning is older than language. It instinct sharpened by centuries of survival. Families used it. Tribes used it. Empires perfected it. Teach one child to take and teach the other to give. The system stays balanced until it does not. When my lawyer friend told me the truth, a cold clarity cut through every lie I'd been fed since childhood. My parents weren't victims of life randomness. They weren't broken. They weren't confused. They had simply completed their mission, preserve the chosen one, secure the bloodline through him. And when the cost became too high, extract the difference from mean, that was the moment I felt something shift. Not in them, but in myself, something primal. Male or female doesn't matter. This awakening feels the same in every human who experiences it. It is the moment you stop being the resource and start becoming the witness, a witness to the machinery behind the curtain. And once you see that machinery, once you recognize how predictable the patterns are, you begin to ask a question most families fear. If they built me into this role, who was I before they touched me? That question is dangerous. It fractures identities. It burns the old script, and it forces you to step into something new, something they cannot control. Before we continue, write this phrase in the comments twice to signal your break from the old identity. The script ends with me. Comment it now twice, so the transformation locks in. When the truth finally uncoiled inside me, it didn't feel like enlightenment. It felt like a door slamming shut in a house I thought I knew. A house built from beliefs so old, so tightly woven into my childhood, that pulling one thread made the entire structure tremble. That's what happens when you expose a generational system. The moment you stop playing your assigned role, everyone who depended on your silence feels the floor shift beneath their feet. That's why my parents didn't apologize. That's why they didn't explain. Instead, they tightened their grip. You see, people raised inside power systems don't ask for authority, they assume it. And when they stepped into my condo, they weren't entering my space. They were reclaiming what the system told them was theirs. They moved with entitlement, not desperation. They rearranged my shelves like curators. They settled on my couch like royalty. They corrected my words, my tone, my questions, as if I were a child instead of an adult standing in her own home. That's how control works. Not through shouting, but through normalization. The most dangerous form of power is the one that masquerades as how things have always been. But once you wake up, every small behavior cracks open like a fossil, revealing the bones of something ancient. My father's silence wasn't calm, it was surveillance. My mother's soft voice wasn't gentleness, it was emotional leverage. Every sigh, every dismissal, every "you'll understand," every "don't make a scene," every "we're your parents" was a tool. These weren't people asking for shelter. They were people reclaiming a resource that had slipped out of their grasp, and that resource was me. Not my home me, my compliance, my reliability, my predictability, my willingness to become the bridge they walked on. The moment they learned I knew the truth, that they'd given $1 million home to my brother and lied about losing theirs, you could feel the atmosphere change. They didn't panic because they were caught. They panicked because the script was unraveling, and the person they counted on to hold the family structure together had gone off script. That's the moment every system fears the awakening of the designated backbone, because once the backbone straightens, the entire organism collapses. And it wasn't anger that filled the room that night. It wasn't betrayal. It was something far deeper, the confrontation between who they needed me to be and who I had finally become a threat. Not to them as people, but to the hierarchy that birthed them. I didn't plan to raise my voice. I didn't plan to stand my ground. Honestly, I didn't even plan to fight my own parents. But something inside me finally snapped the moment. My mother said the words, "This house was never really yours." It felt like someone had poured ice water straight down my spine. My own home, the place I built from the ground up, the first thing in my life I earned without anybody's help, was suddenly being spoken about like a temporary loan I didn't deserve. My father stepped forward, slow, deliberate, as if delivering a final verdict. "Your brother needs stability. You don't have kids. You'll adjust." He won't. There it was, the truth I always felt but never heard spoken out loud. To them, I was the child who would manage. The one who never needed anything, the one who didn't complain, didn't demand, didn't get into trouble. And apparently, the one they could take from. I looked around the living room, the plants I kept alive through winters, the shelves I installed myself, the paint color I chose after 3 weekends of samples. This wasn't just a house. It was my life, my decisions, my sacrifices. And now they wanted to hand it over like a spare key. But the moment that truly broke me wasn't their demand. It was when my brother walked in, hands in his pockets, not even pretending to be uncomfortable. He glanced around like he was already imagining his furniture here. "Can we speed this up?" he said casually. "The movers are waiting for confirmation." Movers. They came with movers. My mother reached for my arm gently, almost pitying. "Sweetheart, don't make this harder. Your brother is having a tough time financially." A tough time, the same brother who just got a $950,000 house from them, fully furnished. While I never asked for a penny, something inside me hardened. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just straightened my back and spoke with a voice I didn't even recognize. "No one is taking my house. Not now, not ever." For a moment, everything froze. Even my brother's smug expression cracked. My father exhaled sharply. "So you're choosing a building over your family?" "Number, I'm choosing myself because you never did." The silence that followed wasn't quiet, it was explosive. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a disagreement. This was the fracture that had been waiting to happen for years. They didn't leave right away. I almost wished they had. Instead, they stood there, 3 people who shared my blood staring at me like I had turned into a stranger right in front of them. My mother was the first to break the silence. Her voice cracked, a mixture of disbelief and wounded pride. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." Repay them. The words hit harder than they should have. Suddenly, I was a debtor, not a child, a burden they expected to collect from. My father stepped forward again, his tone no longer calm. It had shifted into something colder, the kind of voice people use when they're done negotiating. "We sacrificed for you. We raised you. The least you can do is support the family when needed. Support the family translation. Give up your house because your brother wants it." My brother, meanwhile, looked annoyed, like this entire situation was a delay in his schedule. "Are you seriously going to drag this out?" he snapped. "Why can't you just be happy for me? I need a place for my kids. You're single." "You don't. It's common sense." Something hot surged through me, not anger, clarity. I walked right up to him. "You didn't ask for a place, you demanded mine. And you expected me to hand it over because you think your life matters more than mine." He scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. "You're being dramatic. It's just a house." "For you," I replied quietly. "Everything is just something, as long as you're the one taking it." My words hung in the air. My mother shook her head, her voice trembling. We always thought you were the strong one, the independent one. We didn't think you'd make us feel like villains." I swallowed hard. "I'm not making you villains, but your choices, they are." Then my father said the one thing that changed everything. "If you won't give the house, then we'll take it legally." My heart stopped. Legally. They were willing to escalate this, to drag me through courts, paperwork, threats, all to give my brother something he had no right to. My brother folded his arms, satisfied. Good. At least we're doing this the proper way. That was the moment I realized this wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was war. Quiet, polite, emotionally blackmailing war. I stepped back, my voice steady but cold. "Do what you need to do, but understand this, I'm not afraid of any of you anymore." Their faces changed, confusion, hurt, fury, and then they walked out, one by one, without looking back. The moment the door closed, I realized nothing would ever be the same again. For days after they left, the silence in my house felt different. Heavier, not peaceful, just waiting. Waiting for whatever they were planning. And it didn't take long. 3 days later, I got a letter taped to my front door. Not mailed, not delivered properly. Taped, slapped there like a warning. Inside was a typed notice from a lawyer. Their lawyer, it claimed my house was family property. It claimed I had no sole right. It claimed I had been allowed to live here, allowed. As if my mortgage payments, my down payment, my sleepless nights saving every rupee never existed. I sat on the edge of my bed, the letters shaking in my hand. Anger, betrayal, disbelief, all tangled into one choking knot in my chest. That's when I decided something. I would not cry. I would not break. I would not fold the way they expected. Instead, I called my own lawyer, someone I trusted, someone who knew the meaning of boundaries. I handed him every document I had. Every paper proving that this house was mine, bought with my money, built on my effort. He looked through the file, page by page, then leaned back in his chair with a calm smile. "They don't have a case," those words were oxygen, but what he said next was fire, however. "It seems someone tried adding your brother's name to an old utility document years ago, probably to use against you later." My stomach dropped. My brother, my parents, they weren't just acting out of sudden desperation. They had been planning this, preparing this, waiting for the right moment. The betrayal hit harder than any argument, any threat, any door slam. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a long-term intention hidden behind years of polite smiles and family-first speeches. My lawyer drafted a response, firm, final, unshakable, and when their lawyer received it, the silence returned, a different kind of silence, a defeated one. 2 weeks later, my mother called. Her voice was small, tired. "We didn't think you would fight us," she whispered. "We thought you always give in." That was the moment I finally understood. They hadn't underestimated me. They had never bothered to see me. I spoke softly but firmly. "You taught me to be strong. You just never thought I'd be strong against you." She didn't argue. She didn't defend herself. She just sighed, a long, broken sigh, and hung up. And that was it. No apology, no explanation. Just silence, but for the first time, it was a silence I could live with. Because this time, the house was still mine. My peace was still mine, and my strength, the one they never respected, finally saved me. Months passed, not dramatic, not explosive, just quiet months where life slowly rearranged itself in ways I never expected. There were no court cases, no surprise attacks, no dramatic front-door confrontations. The threat faded as quickly as it came. Once they realized I wasn't the same silent, obedient version of myself they had always relied on. But something else faded too, the illusion that we were a family who valued each other equally. I had always believed that love meant sacrifice, that loyalty meant bending, stretching, making space for others even when there was no space left for yourself. But now I understood something different, something I wish I had learned years earlier. Sometimes love becomes stronger when you stop allowing it to be used as a weapon. There were moments when loneliness crept in. Quiet mornings when I wondered if I should have softened, apologized, compromised. Even when I had done nothing wrong, there were nights when guilt knocked gently, asking if I had broken something that couldn't be repaired. But then I'd walk through my hallway, touch the walls I painted myself, past the shelves I built, or open the curtains to sunlight pouring into rooms that held memories I created. And I'd remember, this home is proof that I'm capable. This home is proof that I belong. This home is proof that I belong. This home is proof that I matter to myself. One afternoon, I saw my brother's message pop up on my phone. A short one: "We're selling the mansion." No apology, no explanation, just a reminder of what had started this entire storm. I didn't reply. Because the truth is, the battle was never about property. It was about respect, boundaries, identity. And once you reclaim those, you never give them back. A few weeks later, my mother called again. Her voice was softer this time, not defeated, but reflective. We spoke like two adults who had weathered something painful and were trying to understand what came next. There was no grand reconciliation, no dramatic forgiveness, just honesty, and maybe that was enough. As for me, I planted a small tree in the front yard. Nothing huge, just a symbol. New roots, my roots. Something that would grow only because I tended it. Every time I see it, I'm reminded of the moment I chose myself, the moment everything changed, the moment I realized some homes are built of bricks, others are built of boundaries, and the strongest ones are built of courage.